I was at the LA County Zoo a while back, and I was walking up and down the aisles, and I saw this cage, and there's this big cage there, and in it was a very large lion and a very active monkey. And I called over a zookeeper. I said, "Are they supposed to be in there together?" He says, "Yeah, they're okay." Do they get along? He says, "Yeah, usually they get along fine." What happens when they don't get along? "Oh, we just get a new monkey." I just think that's a great metaphor for relationships nowadays. If they don't work, we just get a new monkey, We just go find somebody else and they'll be just fine. Now, on your tables are some candy. I'd like you to do a kind of a icebreaker, because you're going to be talking to the people at your table. You're going to be interacting a little bit. And I want you to be comfortable with this. And I know your mouth is still full and you're still chewing. So I'll give you a moment to each take a couple of pieces of candy. Now, I am here from Building Bridges Christian Counseling, and on the slide in a minute, there you go, is the phone number. And I want you to plug that phone number into your phone. And the reason is that you can anonymously ask us questions. This is the regular number. If you ever said, "Gee, I wish I knew a counselor. I wish I knew somebody I could call. I wish," it's like, okay, you got my number. There you go. You need to get a hold of Jana, we'll call you back. That's why I want it in your phone. If you have a question during the seminar, then just anonymously text it in. There'll be a few places during the time that we'll bring the phone up and we'll respond to some of your texts. And let's see. There are some cards and brochures in the back, and I just want you to know that those are not for you. Those are for your friends. Because nobody ever picks up a card of a counselor for themselves. They always pick it up for a friend. So if you see somebody picking up a card, just recognize it's not for them. They don't need it. They're fine. Okay? There's also a couple of easels. And there's some paper on that, markers. And those are here so that you can write down your dates that are less than $40. Because a lot of times people want to date, and dating is just so stinking expensive. And so there are in this room a lot of great ideas of fairly inexpensive dates. What do you go do? And some people are just more creative than others. And so, you put on the pad, put down picnic, going on a picnic. One of the things Gretchen and I used to do is we would go to the Starbucks over in Victoria Gardens, and there would be, we had this like travel Scrabble. And the Starbucks at Victoria Gardens has this nice outdoor courtyard, and you go on a nice afternoon and play Scrabble and drink coffee. Costs almost nothing. Or what my parents used to do, which I thought was a really dirty trick when I was a kid. During the summer, they would feed us macaroni and cheese and send us to bed at like 7 o'clock. And when you're a little kid, 7 o'clock and the sun's still out, you can't sleep. It's like, are you kidding me? And we'd be in our beds, and then we'd get out and we'd peek out the window, and we'd go, they're cooking steaks. And, they'd get rid of us so they could have, a nice candlelight dinner without us. And so put down your ideas of a great date that doesn't cost very much, so that we can all benefit from that. And again, later in the day, we'll kind of share some of those great ideas. Now, what you're going to do as far as the icebreaker is you're all going to take a couple of pieces of candy. And I want you to look around the table and look at the people you're with. I want you to pick out the person who has the longest earrings. That may or may not be a man. Now look around, see who has the longest earrings. That person starts. Okay? And let me tell you how you start this. That person will say something they have never done. Like if it were me, it would be, I have never tasted almond milk, even though there is always almond milk in my fridge. And so everybody who sits around the table who has tasted almond milk would give me a piece of candy. Or I have never jumped out of a plane. And then everybody who's sitting around the table who has jumped out of a plane would give me a piece of candy. And so the person who has the longest earrings starts with something they have never done, and then you're going to go around to the left till you get all the way around the table or until we run out of time. Does everybody got that? You got any questions? Got it? All right, go. Now you notice when you're talking, I want you to notice how you feel right now. I want you to notice what your spirit is like right now. I want you to notice that people have been sharing about things and that inside your heart, you feel pretty good, right? You feel pretty open. This is the way husbands and wives need to relate to each other. I want you to, because we're going to talk a lot this morning about being emotionally open. And when this game is going and when you're having fun and when you're interacting and you're sharing information, you should have that openness. And I'm watching the table and I'm thinking, this looks like poker. Some of you guys are just really cleaning up. And I'm wondering, I always wonder about the most exotic things that people have never done or have done that no one else has. But it's great to see all you out here and enjoying a little bit of time together. And let's see, I work at Canyon Ridge Psychiatric Hospital, and it's down there in Central Encino, and I do group therapy, and quite frequently, I'll have a number of people with schizophrenia in the group. And so I was doing group therapy one time, and I had about 9 people with schizophrenia in the group. They're all hearing voices. And some of them hear 6 or 8 voices at the same time. So you take the 9 people, multiply it by the 6 or 8. You get an idea of how many people are in the room. I've got one guy, and he always is falling asleep because the medication makes him drowsy. And so I wake him up, hey, how you doing? I'm fine, How are the voices? He goes, the voices sleep when I do. I said, how do you know? He says, I hear them snoring. Cool. So I've got all these people in the room, and they are hearing voices. So I decided I'm going to do group therapy on the voices. What are the voices telling you? Are they nice to you? Are they cruel? Are they telling you to do stuff? What do you do about it? Do you think they're real? And one guy had a really hard time with his voices. He was exhausted because they would keep him up at night screaming. It would be like laying in bed with somebody next to your ear screaming at you when you're trying to sleep. His voices had a constant dialogue of everything he's doing wrong. Everything, how he was such a loser, and every time he made a choice, it was the wrong choice. And it just was miserable for him. And so I'm going around the room, and I get to this other woman, and she's kind of this cute little thing, and she says, well, my voices just talk to me and tease me and tell me jokes. It's like, well, how nice. I think he would trade. I think he'd love to have your voices. She liked her voices. They were her best friends. She was sure that she was in telepathic communication with the White House chef, and that every day she would beam over her menu suggestions to him, and that he would cook whatever she suggested for the president. So she just kind of had this charmed life. And, we all have voices in our head. Sometimes it's the voice of our parents. Sometimes it's the voice of our childhood. Sometimes it's our past experiences. And we have this dialogue running. And this dialogue either makes us positive and says, you could do it, you're great, you're good looking, you're handsome, you're intelligent, you can accomplish anything in the world. I don't know any of those people. And then there's the ones that have all the negative voices that say, you're a loser, you're down. The person you're married to is really not very good either. And those voices, we actually have the power to steer away from the negative voices and to really choose to listen to the positive voices. And especially when it has to do with our mate. Because if we have a constant litany in our own head of all the things that our mate does wrong, it's going to harden our hearts towards them. And if we also focus on what they do right and all the wonderful things about them, it's going to soften our heart towards them. And we're going to have a much better marriage, and we're going to have a much better life. We have to choose to go to the positive side so that our hearts are soft. Now, in Matthew 19, it's talking about Jesus, and it says, starting in verse 3, some Pharisees came to test him. And they said, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any and every reason? And he said, haven't you read that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female and said, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. Well, why then, they asked, did Moses command that a man give his wife a certificate of divorce and send her away? Jesus replied, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives because your hearts were hard. But it was not this way from the beginning. It's not the way God designed it. It's not, he wanted us to focus on him. He wants our marriage to be an expression of him. I get people all the time in counseling, and when I get people of faith, and they really want to bring their Christianity into the counseling process, we have so much more to work with. And I'll tell people, okay, let me just tell you, if you are going to try and make yourself better, behave better, feel better, do better, because you're hoping they will change, just give it up right now. Because you're going to lose heart. They are not going to change nearly as fast as you want them to. They're not going to try nearly as hard as you want them to. And you're going to give yourself way too much credit. And so you're going to get burned out, discouraged, and you aren't going to be able to keep it up. But if you do it because you want to make your Father proud, if you do it because in your relationship with God, you believe that God wants you to be the best Christian, the best husband, the best father, the best wife you can be, and that from that place of God filling you up, that's going to overflow into the way you do marriage, boy, we got a great shot. And so if I get two people that are completely set apart to God, they move so much faster. It is so much cheaper because it doesn't go on forever. People really do change when the Holy Spirit gets a hold of their life. And you think of the way that it was designed to begin with. Think about agricultural societies, much simpler times. Think about Jesus' time, 2,000 years ago. Think about Adam and Eve and how simplistic life is. Southern California culture strips you of all the basics of life, of relationship, and gets us so busy and so distracted and so overwhelmed with things that aren't really important. They feel important at the time. They feel like tremendous pressure, but not really, not of lasting value. They did studies on college graduates. So these aren't the kids entering college. They're the ones that left with the piece of paper, right? And they said, what was common among college graduates that contributed to their success? And what it was is a family dinner together every day. Wow. It's relationship. It gives our kids a place of security. And so that place of security, and it's also where our faith, our values are imparted to the next generation. It's where they get to have an adult conversation. It's where their words matter. It's where everybody stops and listens to them for a moment. Then they stop and they have to hold their words and listen to somebody else. It's a really great dynamic that goes on with that. They get part of adult discourse. Now, the foundation is Christ. The foundation is our relationship with God, right? If we have this really dynamic relationship with God, we're going to do our marriages better. We're going to be better parents. We're going to be better employees. We're going to be better friends. We're going to do everything better. And it doesn't steal from those things. Now, the next step on the pyramid is our relationship with each other, our marriage. And so you've got the foundation of Christ, then you've got your marriage. And when your marriage is going very well, It doesn't steal from your kids. It makes them more secure. It gives them that really rock hard foundation that they can launch from. And so we'll do our kids better. We will be better employees. We'll be better friends, all that. And so we kind of start with the basics. But often we turn the pyramid upside down so it's balancing on something that's far less important, like our jobs, or a sport, or a hobby, or something like that. And we need to kind of go back and recognize, how did God design it? And God designed it so that we would be in constant connection with each other. That's why Moses permitted it, because your hearts were hard. And we can feel our hearts getting hardened towards each other. Often we've hurt each other incredibly deeply. And if you have been hurt, it can be really hard to open your heart to the person who has hurt you, especially if you're anticipating being hurt again. It's going to require a certain amount of faith. Now, in the beginning, like when people first get married, they have kind of this filter that goes through, right? And you think about it and you go, okay, this person is the most wonderful person I have ever met. Whenever they are out of the room, I want to figure out a way to get back in the room with them. I need to just lock this up and be with this person for the rest of my life. This is amazing, right? And if any red flags come up, then we just dismiss them. That'll work itself out. It's okay, because this just feels so great, right? And then people they'll get kind of disillusioned. And they'll go, no, I wasn't really in love. It was just never really right from the beginning. I just married him because he needed a cosigner for his pickup truck, And no, when you got together, you were crazy about them. And you wanted to lock them in forever. So you got married and you only looked at the good stuff. So then, years later, I find him in my office for counseling. And that filter has flipped. And now they only look at the negative stuff and they disregard all the good stuff. And there's still lots of good stuff. But when the good stuff happens, then we go, you know what, they're just trying to manipulate me. They just want something. That's not really who they are. They're just putting on a show for somebody else. No, they really do have great things about them. They've got amazing qualities about them. There's a lot of really good things. And we're going to do a task, a pen and paper task in a little bit to kind of help you rediscover some of those great things about the person you are married to. And intimacy is going to really depend on how well you're able to communicate with that person. I had one couple where they were in their 40s. They've been married about 5 years. He had a real bone to pick with her son. I guess they were in their 50s because her son was about 30 years old. And he had lived with them for about 2 years. And the husband really didn't like that he lived with them. And he says, you know what? He's a loser. He is unemployed. He has been unemployed. He is not looking for a job. He is not helpful around the house. He is not paying for expenses. We need to just chuck him out as quick as we can. And then you talk to the wife, and she says, he's a really good boy. He's a really good guy. His wife divorced him. He got depressed. He lost his job. It's a really hard job market right now for what he does. He does help around the house. He is looking for a job. He's not wicked. He's in distress. And my point with that was, you're both right. You think about it, they're both on just as far apart as you can get, and they are both right. That both their ideas are right, because he is a pretty good guy, but he's also not looking for a job very hard. He is depressed, and he does need some help. He does help around the house, but not very much, And the way it worked out, she likes him a whole lot better than she likes her husband, because she could not be intimate and love a man who despises her child. And so instead of the two of them being able to come together and say, okay, we got this kid, he's in trouble, he's not a boy anymore, he's 30 years old. How do we have tough love while loving him and encouraging him and shoving him towards the door without rejection and dislike and despising him? But boy, we got to be able to talk. We have to be able to communicate. We got to be able to meet our hearts to be able to have that kind of a conversation. And so we need to be emotionally open in order to do that. Now, I can train people to trade words. I found this out after years of counseling. It's like, they teach you, you teach them the speaker-listener technique. And you have one person will say a paragraph, and then the other person will repeat back the paragraph, and then the first person will say, yeah, you got it right, and then the second person says a paragraph. And you get them to kind of start doing the building blocks of peaceful communication. Because I have had people that are such conflict, that can't even look at each other without starting a huge fight. I've had a couple of couples where I actually had to put them in chairs back to back so that they couldn't see each other when they were talking. And it was just awful. And so after teaching people these techniques to trade words, they would leave and be basically unchanged. I'm going, there's a piece missing. And the piece that is missing is your heart open to the person you're married to? When they talk, is what they say important to you? Because that comes from that place of being open. And that openness comes from a place of feeling safe. You think about like a 7-year-old kid, and you catch him doing something wrong, so you grab him by the scruff of the neck and you're marching him down the hallway because you're going to take him to his room and punish him, right? And you are lecturing him every step of the way. Well, you might as well save your words. He's not hearing a bit of that. He is just in survival mode. If he can survive the next 20 minutes, he's okay, right? And so whatever you told him is just gone. Now, 2 days later, kids fulfill this punishment. You take him out for a smoothie. You go, hey, son, I just want you to know why I was so upset the other day. Oh, why, Daddy? Well, now his heart is open to you. And now you can speak into his life because he feels safe. And often we don't help the person we're married to feel safe talking to us. And often we don't feel safe talking to them. And so, like when you did the icebreaker, that's why I wanted you to kind of reach down in and look at the feelings you were feeling and go, this feels good. This feels open. This feels okay. And some of you, it was really actually a very anxious thing. I got to talk to strangers. And so you weren't feeling open. You were feeling really kind of tense because you got to perform. You got to look right. And you got to smile just right. And is my hair okay? Right? So some people are so busy in the conversation in our own head, it's hard for them to just kind of take a breath and open their heart. Now, again, is our relationship with God trickles down, and it's a model for how we do relationship with each other. You think about worship. And you're standing there in church, and the worship music is going, and you're just not into it. You're just kind of looking around, seeing who's walking in, seeing if they're cute, and it just doesn't penetrate. And then there are other times when you make this actual decision to enter into worship, and you can feel God's presence in your heart. You can feel, just how good that is. You feel connected. That's what I'm talking about. That openness to God is the openness we need to have with each other. There are things that God wants us to understand, like intellectually. There's a lot of intellectual information he wants to impart to us. He wants us to read our Bibles. He wants us to hear sermons. He wants us to learn more about him and about Christ. And you notice that when the sermon is going, then the pastor somewhere along the way will tell a story. And that story is to hook your emotions and to drag your emotions into it, because our emotions is where our motivation is. Because if we want to actually do the things we think we ought to do, we have to be emotionally invested in it. Now, if you think about your friends, and there are times you have given your friends really good advice, and they don't do it. And they'll say, yeah, I know I should stop taking drugs and go to school and I should get my life in line and and then they don't do it, right? Intellectually, they agree with you. Yes, I got it. Emotionally, they haven't signed in. And so our motivation comes from our emotional side. We need to be able to minister to our emotional side. Our emotions can honor God. There are times when we emotionally feel connected to God, like when you're holding a baby, like when you're walking in nature, like when you're feeding the poor, in worship, those things. And there's times when you read the Bible and a verse just jumps out at you and you know God put it there just for you. There's like this emotional hook that comes and says, I don't just want you to understand me, I want you to experience me. That's the same emotional openness that I want you to be aware of when you're with each other. Now, there's a lot of things that get in the way of communication, that get in the way of that emotional connection. And so you think about that there are different levels of communication. Now, when you're at church and you cross paths with somebody and you kind of were in a class with them sometime and you don't know them really well and you just say, hey, how you doing? Hey, we're doing just great. Say, it's good to see you. See you next week, right? That's kind of the most shallow, surfacey level of communication, right? There's nothing wrong with it. It's appropriate for the situation. And then in marriages, there's kind of doing the business of marriage. Well, there's only $500 in the checking account, so don't buy anything big. And, Johnny needs to be picked up at 3 o'clock. And make sure that you're not home late, right? Just doing the business. Couples can go years on this level of communication. They can go for years of just checking in and doing business and getting stuff done without really sharing their hearts. And you wonder why when the kids get older, why when they're about to leave the house, why the husband and wife don't know each other anymore. Why that person you're married to is no longer that important in your life. All we are is just kind of facilitators, to get stuff done. We're not really in love, massively in love, crazy about each other. That yes, marriages go up and down. There are times when you are just puppy love, man. Just can't believe you're so lucky to be married to the person you are. And there's times where you look at them and go, really? Oh my gosh. But I'm going to make the best of it. And during the ups and downs, it's that friendship that ties you together. That's why you need to do stuff together. There's certain neurochemicals that really facilitate your relationship. There's one called dopamine that's necessary for being in love. And dopamine is increased when we have new and exciting activities. When we go places, do things, experience new things, that's why when you're dating, you go do all kinds of stuff, right? That's why if you want a girl to fall in love with you, you take her on great dates and you take her to concerts and you take her in a hot air balloon and she experiences all these great new activities, and then we get married and those stop. When I was dating my lovely wife, poor suffering woman she is, we were singles leaders at our church, and we went to a dance. And so she and I are dancing, and we were already engaged by that time. And she said, will we go dancing after we're married? No, honey. This is a courting ritual. There will be no dancing after we're married. Occasionally at weddings, I'll try because that's important to her, but I'm no good at it. When you get the songs at church when they want you to clap along in time, I'm the one doing this when everybody else is doing this, right? I got to actually watch somebody. It doesn't come natural to me. But you try, you learn new things. If dancing doesn't work, you do other things. You want to get out of that place of just kind of doing that surfacey checking in with each other communication. The next level of communication is talking about what you feel, what you think. How do you understand things? It's having those conversations about the kids and saying, wow, they're kind of straying from the path. How do we get them back on? What do you think is going on? What do you want for the future? Do you think we should paint the car? All the stuff about what you think and how you understand the world and what your faith is and what God wants us to do. And those things are great when you get into those conversations. I'm a big fan of couples that are able to do kind of couch time where when they get home from work, they can just kind of send the kids away or do something else and just sit on the couch and talk about their day. And guys, when wives tell guys, let's have a talk. And guys go, I don't want to talk. Guys, find something to talk about. Like when something's happening during your day, just kind of make a mental note. Hey, it would be kind of a cool story to tell my wife when I got home. Just give yourself assignment. 3 things. Find 3 things. Somebody got their foot run over by a forklift. Somebody got yelled at by the boss. Something happened at work. And just come home and tell your wife, hey, these things happen, right? And that way, she will feel like she's got a little bit of connection to you. And wives, I want you to share, but we can't hear as many details as you perhaps want to share with us. Just kind of understand. That's why you need good girlfriends too. It's like, but I want you to be able to check in with each other and grab a couple of chairs, go out in the backyard, and just have a nice time at the end of the day. And then the most intimate level is talking about what you feel. I put down, I feel sad when the Dodgers lose. But the things that scare you, the things that you worry about the kids, the things that, gosh, when you do this thing, when you embarrassed me in front of my friends, when you hurt me by, not returning my text, when you did these things, being able to just kind of share your heart. That's a harder place to go to. That's a more vulnerable place to go to. But it's a really important place to go to because that's kind of where your hearts start to mesh with each other. Now, there's things that close your mate's communication. There's things that close their hearts. There's things that just kind of take them and go, I don't want to talk to this person. And so we, at one time or another, do all of these things. And some of us do it a lot. But one of it is criticism. Now, occasionally, yes, you need to be able to bring a little bit of correction or, share your heart. Please don't do that. Please stop telling that story, whatever it is. Now, one of the things that John Gottman, who's a researcher, he has recorded conversations between couples. He actually puts couples up in like an apartment for the weekend and records all their words, all their conversations. And he has taken thousands of couples through it and has learned a lot about communications. And one of them things is that happy couples speak out 5 times as many positive statements as negative statements. 5 times as many. If you start thinking about the conversations that go between you and your mate, is it 5 times more life-giving, more positive, more encouraging? Or is it something where, wow, gosh, we're kind of flipped that around and we're doing it the other way? Now, it doesn't mean you can't bring up things that bother you. But it means that you tend to save the criticism and it becomes kind of the minority. And then they actually hear you. It actually ends up being taken far more seriously because it's not something that they hear all the time. Because that constant criticism just kind of wears on people and closes their hearts down. Now, sometimes what the better thing to do is if your mate does something that bugs you, just sit back, don't say anything, and just wait. And then see if it happens again. And then, if it does, and it happens a 3rd time, then you can say, okay, now we have a pattern. It's not just a one-time thing where it was a slip of the tongue or they were just stupid for a moment, because We are all knuckleheads, okay? And you kind of give them grace to be knuckleheads. But if you're starting to see a pattern, then you go out to lunch and you go, hey, let me tell you something that you've been doing lately that's kind of bugging me. And at that moment, their heart is open and they're able to hear you. But if every time they kind of trip up and do something wrong and pound, you're on them, then they're going to feel like they're walking on a minefield. And their heart is not going to be open because they're always going to be ready to be attacked. And so you want to be able to do that with a lot of wisdom. The other thing is lecturing. Sometimes we just know so much better than they do. And they should listen to us. I occasionally do counseling with teenagers, not as much anymore, but I had one young man, and I was trying to get his parents, individually to take him out and spend time with him. Do something he likes. Take him out to lunch, take him out to breakfast, take him go-kart racing. Do stuff with him so that you can start building back that relationship because there's just been so much contentiousness in there. And I told the mom, this is a no lecture zone. You are not allowed to impart to him anything you want him to know about his future and who he is and what you want from him. And she says, are you kidding me? I got 4 kids. If I get him by himself, I gotta pour into him all these things. My hopes, my dreams, and things that he could be doing better. I gotta do these things, because now I got him. And I said, okay, I'll make a deal with you. You can tell him anything you have never already told him. Man, that cuts it way down. Because what do? We tell them over and over again. They have already rejected our advice and they become parent deaf. We become spouse deaf when we are lectured. We shut down, our hearts close, and then we don't. Disrespect. Disrespect is, now let's kind of agree on certain rules for disrespect. If you mock somebody, if you roll your eyes when they're talking, if you insult them, if you call them names, that is absolutely disrespect, right? We would all agree on that. Now, I'm going to kind of out you guys a little bit. I just want you to know that. The guys often will say they have been disrespected when they got their feelings hurt. Because it doesn't feel very manly to say, I got my feelings hurt. So I'll say, she disrespected me. That kid disrespected me. Well, did they roll their eyes? Did they, really do something that you would be able to classify as disrespect? Or do you just not like the way it feels? Often, disrespect sounds like they didn't agree with me. Now think about it. The person you're married to should have their own relationship with God. God should be speaking to them independent of you. They should have their own understanding of the world, their own backgrounds, their own experiences, and then God brings them together so that the two of you can be greater and do a better job and encourage each other and understand more and be able to work things out that we wouldn't be able to do by ourselves. And if both of you think exactly alike, one of you is not necessary. Right? Disagreeing with you is not disrespect. Disagreeing with you is an invitation to a conversation. Can we talk about this? Can we talk about the things that, because we disagree on some pretty profound levels, and can my heart be open and be able to hear what you have to say to me? Now, there's one thing that also goes with that is because love is so much more important to women and respect is so much more important to guys. Guys, I got to ask you, are you respectable? Do you live your lives with integrity? Do you use fear or intimidation to get your way? Do you treat your wife with kindness and respect? Do you honor her in front of other people? When you are respectable, you will be so much easier to respect. You know, there's an old saying that for a man to have friends, he must prove himself friendly, right? For us to be respected, we need to be respectable. Women, you want to be loved. Are you lovable? Think about that. One of the things that Gretchen and I, we were at a Valentine's Day event, and they said, what is it that you really appreciate about your mate? The thing I appreciate about my mate, she is always happy to see me. That's kind of amazing to me. Do you know what a gift that is? To walk in your door to somebody who's really glad you're there? That's huge. And so if she's glad I'm there, I am glad to be there. And so it makes her lovable. It's a great quality. And so sometimes we're not that loved because we're not that lovable. And we have to own that part of it. And we may be married to a knucklehead too. And God's going to work on them, but I'm going to work on me. And so I need to be the qualities I want to see in somebody else. Now, there's a thing called flooding and stonewalling. See it in counseling all the time. And you can imagine those pictures of the tsunami. You saw those videos? And the waves roll in and carries away everything. You know, houses and trees and cars, and it's all gone. And then the waves go back out to sea, and all that's left is a stone wall, right? And so one partner is more emotional. One partner is more invested, more passionate, and they get big, and they say, this is important. And the other partner is saying, calm down, it's okay, just no big deal. We'll get through this. It's all right. And then the first partner goes, no, you don't understand. This is huge. The world's going to end. It's going to be unbelievable and awful. And they go, no, calm down. It's okay. And the more the person who is locking down and stonewalling, then the bigger the other person, the more emotional the other person gets because they're trying so hard to get their point across. And so realize they are both trying to make the relationship better. One of them is trying to make the relationship better, saying, if you understand me, we will deal with this issue and we will love each other better and it's going to be great. And the other one's going, calm down, it's okay. Don't go psycho on me, it's all right. And so the person who's more emotional needs to click down a couple of levels, and the person who's stonewalling needs to come up a couple of levels so we can have a conversation somewhere in the middle. But you recognize that they used to call these in school, they call it an ironic feedback loop. And irony is when you are expecting one thing and you get something else, right? I am expecting that if I tell you this thing with passion, that you'll understand me and it's going to be great. And instead, what do I get? I get somebody who has checked out. I have had couples where he'll be sitting on the couch watching sports, and she will stand between him and the TV and scream at him. And he'll reach around her with the clicker. And that's when you got to go to Dr. Phil and go, how's that working for you? It just doesn't work. You know, and it's like, okay, then what do I do? How do I handle this? Has anybody been in sales training? Has anybody been in a job where they have to deal with angry customers? In a job where you had to do customer service with people that are completely unreasonable? Okay, the training you got there is going to help you in your marriage, right? Now, if somebody comes to you and you're in charge of returns at the store, and they come and they put this TV on your desk, say, this TV doesn't work, right? And they're angry and they're hot about it because they had to disconnect it and drag it down here and it should have worked. And they're just going off. And what do? You remain calm and you affirm their feelings, right? You validate their feelings. You are not agreeing that they are right, but you're understanding how they feel. And sir, I really get that this was frustrating for you. I really am sorry that, this has been such an ordeal for you. I understand, that you're really angry and that, this is not how you wanted to be spending your afternoon. And you kind of just stay calm, but recognize their feelings are pretty much what other people would feel. And so you just validate their feelings, right? You're not admitting guilt. You're not agreeing. All you're doing is saying, yeah, I get it. And so you validate their feelings, and what'll happen is when one person stays calm and the other one is escalating, eventually that person will start dialing back down again, right? Because if you take an angry person and you come back at them with anger, well, now we got something that's coming up, right? But if one person stays calm and says, tell me about it, tell me the story, tell me what happened, then that person will peak, and then they'll start coming down the other side. It's not until they start coming down the other side they are ready to receive intellectual information. And that's when in sales, and you go, and they start to calm down, and they go, okay, I know it's not your fault, but I'm just so frustrated with this TV. And then you're able to say, I see water coming out of the vents, and you're not supposed to use the TV in the pool. And it really does void the warranty. Let me see what I can do for you, right? And so at the beginning, you didn't say, yes, it's a terrible TV, and it's all, all you did was say, you know what, I get it. Tell me about it. Tell me the story. Walk you through it. And we can do that with each other. When that person is starting to be that tsunami, we can be calm and just hear their story. It's all right. And then when they start to come down, then you start talking about, well, aren't there other factors going on there? Now, Stephen Covey has said, seek to understand before being understood. Often we are too quick to jump in with our opinion. They give us an opinion and we got to meet it with one of our own. No, we don't. That can come later. Now, you think about high school debate club. If anybody was in a debating society, what would happen is they would have a topic, and then you would each choose sides, and then you would say that, we're going to say, pro-death penalty or anti-death penalty. And then one side would get up and say their piece. They would make all their points. And then the second person would come back and refute that. It's actually the cool place to be the second person. Because when they've gotten up and they've made all their points and they have passionately described what their thing is, then you're able to take their points, consolidate it in what you believe, and then you're able to come up with a much more cohesive, cogent, intelligent retort instead of, so's your old man, right? Instead of just coming back, just say, you know what, hear them out. You'll get your turn. It's all right. And when they come down, then you go, okay, well, let me tell you what I think. It doesn't cost you a thing. And it earns you their respect and their love, because then you'll have paid dues. You'll have communicated that what they say is important. Remember where it started? Emotionally, I got to be open to what you're saying is important. Now, I want you to look in your paper, and there is a Traits of Your Mate worksheet. And I want you to think about the person you're married to, and I want you to circle everything that applies to them. Okay, so just go down this list and circle each item. Now, this is about being really positive, and so someone tell me something great about their mate. When you circled something, there is something on that list that makes your life dramatically better because they have those characteristics in your life. Who wants to brag on their husband or wife a little bit? Yes, sir. Forgiving. That's a great one. Yes. Good looking. Awesome. Godly. Yes. And bold. Yes, sir. Dependable. Yes, sir. Encouraging. And honest. Yes. Patient. Yes.
Protective.
And protective. It's wonderful. Yes, sir. Good looking. You bet. Provider. Yes, sir. Supportive. Loving. Yes. Stable. Stable is good. Stable's a good thing. If it's stably good, you know. Now, one more. Silly. Silly can be really fun. Now, think about the things and pick out 3 on your list that specifically make your life better because your mate has those traits. And I want you to write it on that blank line at the bottom of the sheet. And when you get those at the bottom of the sheet, I'm going to want you guys to stretch a little bit because I'm going to want you to pray for each other. You know, and so just think how encouraging it is to have the person you're married to thank God for you. When I get couples in counseling, I want them to pray for each other. I want to pray for each other's needs, but I also want them to thank God for each other. Because when you do this list, usually you can't help be reminded of just how incredible a person that you're married to and how grateful you are that God brought this person into your life and that their character traits make your life so much better. And I want you to really recognize that. And you think about if every day you were to put a hand on your mate's shoulder and say, thank you, God. Thank you for this wonderful mate. Thank you for blessing me so much. Thank you that she is godly and good looking and wonderful and a great mom. Thank you that our lives are stable and that she is kind and forgiving. If your mate did that to you, if your wife put her hand on your shoulder and thank God that you are a godly man, a good man, a great dad, how could you not be built up? How could you not go off and have a better day? How could you not just massively fall in love with her? And so that being open. Now, some of you, boy, you know, praying together is a scary thing. You know, praying out loud is not in your normal. And so I want you to notice that at the bottom of the page, I have written out the prayer for you, and I don't want you to use it if you're comfortable praying out loud. You know, if you're comfortable just doing this on your own, just let it flow. But if not, just read the words, but mean them. And so I want to give you a moment to just kind of turn towards each other, turn your chairs to each other, bow your heads together, put a hand on their shoulder, on their knee, and thank God for them. Now I want to ask you again to kind of look inside. And how do you feel? Does this draw you close to your mate? Does this create a bridge between the two of you? You think about that intimate moment you just felt, and how you can do that on a regular basis. What do? We have prayer with each other available to us 24/7. For some of you, your schedules don't line up, and you might even have to do it over the phone. But just recognizing how this feels, how it feels to be emotionally open, how it feels to have your hearts intertwined, how it feels to be connected like that. And why wouldn't you do that every day? Why wouldn't you take that time to be interconnected and intertwined like that, to allow God to download into you what he wants you to have? to pray for his blessings on your marriage, on your kids, on each other. And so a lot of times when we come to God, it's because we want stuff. You know, dear God, protect my kids. Dear God, make me safe. Dear God, whatever it is. Instead of just saying, I am so grateful for what we have. You know, sometimes we're so wrapped up in all the things we don't have and all the things we think we need, and we don't recognize how much we do have. If you have a cell phone and a refrigerator, you are in the top 5% of the world economically. Do you ever think about that? We live in a false sense of reality of what we need. We live in a place where everybody needs to be in every activity, needs to be incredibly busy, needs to be have every advantage, needs to be in the bigger house and the nicer car. No, you don't. What you need is each other. What you need is the Lord. What you need is peace in your heart. And a lot of times when that next payment comes, I don't have peace in my heart. It is amazing the difference when people come into me for counseling between the couples who have money in the bank and the couples who are being hounded by creditors. I mean, you can, just as I say that, some of you get tense, right? And it's because you have invited chaos into your life instead of peace. And so for some of you, it was not purposeful. For some of you, it was a certain level of activity that you really felt like you need to have. And, you know, when you look at, what's it called? The Financial Peace University, you know, that Dave Ramsey, yeah, great stuff. And he calls it that on purpose, you know, because it gives you peace. You're not going home and fighting over money and trying to juggle the bills. And do I have to pay the electric bill? And I have to let the car payment go this month. And, you know, people are calling and hounding you. No, it's like, wow, we got all the bills paid and we got money in the bank. And we have money in the bank because we live a much smaller lifestyle. And we drive a 10-year-old car and we live in a smaller home, but we have peace. Because, you know, if you have years of chaos and years of conflict, you don't get those years back later. This is the only life we get, man. And then, you know, when we get to the end, then we go be with the Lord and then it's all done. You know, if you want to enjoy these years, you live your life in a way that creates and invites peace into your life. And so often the things that we have expectations of each other, we've added on to what God expects it to be. What do you have? You have how marriage was. And when God created it, a husband and wife, you know, sooner or later kicked out of the garden and, you know, basically living an agricultural life. But they had the Lord and they had each other and they didn't have much else. Now they found that statistically, the divorce rate goes up with education and income. You know, if you are a Vietnamese rice farmer making $700 a year, your divorce rate is probably really low. And the reason that it's low is because they need each other for mutual survival. Their roles are very clear. They know what it means to be a good husband. They know what it means to be a good wife. You know, if you work hard and you support the family, you're a good husband. You don't drink away all the money, you're doing great. If she takes care of the kids and she helps in the fields, she's a good wife. We add all these other expectations of each other that is just totally unrealistic. And we need to give each other a lot of grace. There's besides just giving grace, besides just forgiving, and going even over and above that, you can get to the point where the thing that really bugs you about the person you're married to can be the thing that you actually cherish about them the most, which sounds really strange. Let me give you an example of this. You think about, there's this thing that my lovely wife has done in the past. And she would drive for Cal Poly University, and she'd be all over Southern California. And she would occasionally get a parking ticket. And occasionally those parking tickets wouldn't get paid. And does anybody know what happens to a parking ticket when you don't pay it? What happens to it? They triple it and add it to your car registration. And so I'd get the car registration bill for $100. And there would be two $30 tickets that turn into $90 tickets, and now it's $280. Oh my gosh, I was nonplussed. This was unexpected. This was not cool. And so I'd give her a hard time. And next year when the car registration came in, it also would have a couple of parking tickets on it. And it became kind of an annual thing. Let's see how many parking tickets are this year. And that would bug me, but because it was so predictable, over the course of the year, I would notice that I would make a financial decision, one way or the other, that cost us money. I would make a bad decision, a bad investment, a bad choice, and it would cost us money, and it would be a whole lot more than the parking ticket. And so I would actually be far more at fault and have far more, against me than this once-a-year thing. And so I noticed she never gave me a hard time. She never brought it up again. She just let it go. It just is. And I noticed she had so much grace for me. Why do I need to hammer her over this? And it's part of the recognition that we are all knuckleheads. We are all so discombobulated, and that when you get two people that are both sinners saved by grace, but made in the image of God, that because we're made in the image of God, we have value. But because we're sinners saved by grace, we're going to screw up all the time. And because she is imperfect, it gives me the freedom to be imperfect. Because she's a knucklehead, I get to be a knucklehead. And we don't give each other a hard time over being knuckleheads anymore. Because she has grace, it's so much easier for me to have grace towards her. And she doesn't have that job anymore, and she doesn't get parking tickets anymore, but I'm still grateful for the thing that says, she loves me anyway. And so that freedom to be comfortable in your own skin, comfortable in your own mistakes, comfortable in your own home, what a gift that is. And so I had gotten to the point where I would open up the car registration and go, thank you, Jesus, that this is not really that big a stretch for us. It's okay. And you just love her anyway, right? Because she loves me anyway. You make this conscious choice to not harden your heart, this conscious choice to stay emotionally open to the person you're married to. Those things are huge. There was a book years ago by Joyce Landorf called Irregular People. Long time ago. And she was married to a guy named Dick, and Dick was a door shaker. And what Dick would do is that Joyce would go to bed first, right? She'd lock the doors, she'd lock the windows, she'd get up. Dick would go to bed first. She would be downstairs locking the doors and the windows, and she would follow him upstairs. He would be in bed, and he would ask her, did you lock the doors? Yes, I locked the doors. He would then get out of bed, go back downstairs, and he would shake each one of the doors. And she took just huge offense at this. And it's like, am I an idiot? Am I a child that you can't trust me to lock a door? And he did it every night for years. And so she just kept getting more and more resentful about that until one day she decided, recognized this is her decision, to bless him for it instead of curse him for it. Do you want to live in the blessing? Or do you want to live in the curse? And what she told herself is, Dick is a detail guy. Dick is a banker. Because Dick's a detail guy and a banker, he makes a really good living. We live in a really nice home. Our kids do really well. And because of that, he cannot, and because he is such a protective husband and father, he cannot delegate the safety of his family to anybody, even me. He has to get up and shake the doors because that is who he is, and it has nothing to do with me. And I bless him for it. Now you realize that Dick is not part of this conversation. Dick is still getting out of bed and shaking the doors every day like he has before, right? It's a change she made in her own heart. And sometimes we need to do that. We need to be able to make that change in our own heart. We need to decide to bless instead of to curse, to give grace instead of to be critical, and to be kind and emotionally open and to hear them rather than to hold them to a standard that they can't possibly live up to. So it's just difficult. And so we're going to have let's see, Jana, let me ask you, was there anything that you, nope, there is one. Okay, Jana's got a text, there might be a question here.
Actually, we have several.
We have several.
Okay,
Pick a good one.
well, the first one is, do you charge separately for each voice of the client?
I would be rich if I were able to charge separately for each of the voices.
All right. Here's one that's kind of come out with several different questions from different people. What do you do when the traits of your mate circled, or better, didn't circle, make you seem like you're messing it up?
When you look at the sheet, remember about living in the blessing or living in the curse? Do you look at all the things that are circled and feel blessed by that? Or are you just naturally drawn? You know, some of us had those critical parents, and the critical parents said, that's an A, why isn't it an A plus? It was a B, why wasn't it an A? And they come in and you've done 5 of your chores out of 6, and they point out the one you didn't do. They didn't point out the 5 that you did. We need to begin to parent ourselves. We need to begin to choose to live in the blessing. We need to begin to see ourselves as God sees us, the way God approves of us. Being okay, being a knucklehead, being okay, not being perfect, those things are important. You know, and that is one of the reasons people come into counseling. A lot of times they can't get those voices out of their head. And much of the process is agreeing with God about you. God's crazy about you. God knows you're a knucklehead, and he's crazy about you anyway. And that's a good thing. And when I read the Bible, I got one rule when I read the Bible. Anytime I disagree with God, I'm wrong 100% of the time. And that means including what he thinks about me. He approves of me. Jen?
How would you describe the different love seasons of your life, such as dating and newlywed, which then becomes the child-rearing season, to the season of empty nest? They're all love, but different.
Yeah, so there's different seasons, and there's different levels, and there's also the infatuation stage. There's kind of a disillusionment stage. There's a mature love stage, and it hits at different points in our lives. Our family systems tend to be affected massively whenever somebody enters or somebody leaves. When a baby is born or somebody goes off to college, when a grandparent dies, or when we marry somebody, or when there's a blended family, and there's always these transitional times. And when you're trying to remain massively in love through all these ups and downs and changing situations. And I'll let you in a little bit on my history, in that I was married for 13 years to an incredible wife named Pam, who passed away, left me as a widower with 3 little kids. And then I started asking out Gretchen a couple years later, and she turned me down the first couple times I asked her out, and that doesn't hurt. So So I got to the point where I said, I'm going to ask her to marry me. I told my mother, I said, Mom, I'm going to ask Gretchen to marry me. And my own mother said, well, son, you're no prize with those 3 kids. Wow. Thanks, Mom. Pretty soon, we combined households, and we had 5 teenagers at the same time. And whenever you have 5 teenagers or any multiples of kids, you are going to have one kid that takes you to hell and back. Been there, done that, bought the t-shirt, right? And through that, you can't let all the circumstances define what your relationship's going to be with each other. You have to put the foundation of Christ. That has to be a given. We were at church every week. If our kids were on restriction, we would let them off to go to youth group. Everything that would lead us closer to God, we did because we needed Him so bad. And then the marriage, right? It's the next level of the pyramid. Because if the marriage is good, then it's stable. Then the kids can be okay. And if the kids come unglued, that's okay. They got a little room to come unglued because we're stable. But kids, especially in a step family, are going to try and get in between you. And they are going to try and rip you apart. And what would happen is that we would take, kind of a conflict with the kids, and whoever is the natural parent would handle the problem. And then the 2 of us would go off in the bedroom and kind of, and then we would come back out as a unified, presence. And then again, the natural parent would say, you know what, this is the way it's going to happen. We would let anything that was bad came down from the natural parent. Anything that was good, we let the step parent say, you're going to have an increase in your, in your allowance. You're going to have an extra privilege. We're going to, talk about getting your driver's license. That always came from the step parent. So we would allow them to kind of bond. But through that, boy, you guys have to be okay with each other. Otherwise, boy, they'll tear you apart. Any other, Jenna?
Yeah, here's another good one. Why do I continually criticize and mistreat my spouse? When they tell me I've been hurtful, I feel bad, but I continue to repeat these destructive cycles.
Okay. Again, pretty common and pretty honest. And really the first step is to recognize it's not that they are so deficient, it's that I have that critical spirit. And that I need to look at that and figure out what's hollow in me. I sometimes would need to purpose to speak out positive things. I would perhaps need to, rather leave the room than say something that I've said before that's hurtful. I need to have new strategies. And part of it sometimes comes from not being filled up myself. Sometimes I've got this emptiness in my own soul and I can't quite figure out what to do about it. And I need to have this relationship with God that's really meaningful. I need to have friends of the same sex. I need to have other people I can talk to and unload with. I need to have hobbies. I need to have joy. I need to do things that make my life good. So I am coming from a place of fullness instead of a place of hollowness and emptiness. And so my life needs to be full. And if I don't have any room for those, I need to make room. I need to create a space for me in there. And I need to make sure that my life really exudes kindness. And if it is really not honoring God the way that I'm critical of my mate, I need to repent. And I may need to repent and apologize and repent and apologize over and over again until I get to the point where I don't say it because I don't want to apologize again. And just learning new patterns. Yes.
We have several that they're just being thankful for their spouse and the different traits on the worksheet. And however, one says, why is my spouse hiding their list?
You tell me. Something tells me you know the answer to that question.